All right, everyone, welcome back. I haven't been here for a while. I think the last class I did was Monday night. Then I dropped off. I did some traveling last week, and because it was Gimel Tammuz, and I spoke in a few places in Florida. Shame those were not recorded. But I am actually going to do my prime talk that I gave over there. I'm going to do tonight on the YouTube over here. So at 6 o'clock p.m., Bezrat Hashem, our time over here, Pacific time, 9 o'clock East Coast time. So you can tune in for that. I think it'll be worth listening to. I'm excited about it. But this is a continuation to what we've been learning on the Key to Redemption series. We're holding in episode 9. We should really be holding now in episode 11. We're running behind. This week is a double portion, so it's really episode 11 and 12. And we haven't done 10 yet, and we're still holding in middle 9. So I'm lagging behind a little bit, but see what we can do to try to catch up and to move a little faster over here. We are holding now in chapter 4, starting chapter 4, this amazing talk on the 28th of Sivan, in which we were discussing the concept of the spies and the idea of Vayasuru es Eretz Canaan. The Rebbe was talking about the power of the 28th day of Sivan. Okay, that's the day the Rebbe came to America. So the Rebbe is talking about the power of the day in terms of its significance, in terms of its cosmic significance, regarding the purpose of Torah in the world. We discussed that the Torah is given in the third month. Number 3 represents the power of power. 3 is strength, because something repeats itself 3 times. It's called chazaka in Hebrew. Halachically, it's considered a well-established, unbudgeable, or a very firm reality. Number 28 is in Hebrew gematria koach. Koach means power. The Rebbe explained that the power of 28 comes from 3 times 3, which is 27. So it's 3 times 3 times 3. That's the idea. 3 times 3. I'm saying no. First you start with 1 times 3. Then you do that 3 times 3 is 9. And that 9 times 3 is 27. So you have triple 3, which gives you extra strength. That's 27. But since that power does not reveal itself until it's completed, so you have to wait to the 28th day, and the power of the 27, which is the 3 times 3, which is the 3 to the power of 3, then it reveals itself. So therefore, the 28th day is very powerful. What's the 28th day of the month? The power of that particular month comes to its full energy, to its full expression. And in the month of Sivan, it's the power of the Torah. So what is the power of the Torah? So the Rebbe explained, what is the power of Torah? The power of Torah is to reveal godliness in a place that is non-godly, and to go to the lowest, go to the most resistant of places, overpower the resistance, the darkness, the ignorance, the resistance, and break through over there and uncover God even there. And that doesn't only reveal the power of the Torah, it reveals the power of the Jewish people, that they can apply the Torah to the most ungodliest of places and turn around those most remote places to make it holy. And then even deeper than that, it reveals the power of Hashem, because the ultimate truth of God is not revealed in the upper worlds, the Rebbe explained, but only in the Malchut. Malchus represents the lowest level, where the lights of Hashem are not visible, but the essence of God then emerges. And that's the secret of physicality and the power of the earth. And that's what the spies were told to go into the land of Israel, to go uncover the power of the earth being the lowest, but yet holding within it the deepest secret of Hashem's truth. That's all what we learned earlier. That was the idea that we learned earlier. That's the ultimate revelation of the power of the Torah, is that it can, even in a physical place, a simple translation, a person has a physical body. The natural tendencies of the physical body is to be bent inward towards selfish pursuits. A person's physical life, a person can make the statement, I don't live forever. I'm here. I have possible enjoyments. These enjoyments are available for me right now. If I bend and yield, and live for something higher than myself, I'm going to be missing out on all these pleasures and all these enjoyments, and that's it. And the physical doesn't know of anything else, doesn't know of a tomorrow, doesn't know of eternity, doesn't know of soul, spiritual bliss. So it thinks, and the physical doesn't care about anything. Give me pleasure right now. Now the Torah um, interferes with all of that, because Torah comes and says, live your life to serve your Creator. The fact that the Torah is able to take a physical body, and which is in our lives, which we try to live to the best we can according to Torah, that is the ultimate demonstration of the divine truth. That even in a physical body, which everybody would bet on, that the person would live a godless existence, when the bets and everything turns out to be opposite what people put their monies on. That this physical, chunky, thick, coarse being is yet infused with divine consciousness and surrenders itself completely to the divine will and lives an upstanding life, a life for a higher purpose and a higher reason. What does that do? That reveals and demonstrates God's ultimate truth, that God is true not only on heaven, but he's also true on earth. He's not only the truth of the spiritual, he's also the truth of the physical. It's just that the physical, it's harder to unlock its truth. But once you can unlock it, and that comes by downloading lots of spiritual lights into the physical, and that softens the physical's resistance. But the point over here is not that the physical should just become this was all we discussed earlier, not only that it should become a recipient of all the spiritual lights, like a bowl that receives all the liquids that are poured into it, but that's only stage one. Stage two is that as a result of all that spiritual light flowing into the body and into earth and into the material should uncover its own secret, and that it is that in a certain way it expresses God's truth even more than all the spiritual lights that have been pouring into it. So the spiritual infusions that happen through soul energy infusing into a body is only an introductory state in order to bring out the true value that there is in the material physical world. And for that purpose, God sent our souls down into the world, sent the Torah into the world. And that's the strength that is revealed on the 28th of Sivan. Now, we're going to see soon, now is where the Rebbe takes the whole talk, and he's going to, even though we discussed this already, but now we're going to see it, how the Rebbe develops it, how this reached a certain state. In other words, in addition to this being the story of each and every one of our lives, and we struggle, we have resistance of our bodies, and sometimes, our bodies puts up a fight, and it takes us years, sometimes months, weeks, months, years to overcome, and to be able to penetrate divine consciousness into certain parts of our human lives that don't want to have that God interfering with it. Now, certain areas in our lives we accept, and we're able to run the divine program because there's less resistance. Certain areas in our lives we find that there's more resistance. Everybody knows which area in their life they find living the godly life being more difficult. And the point of here is it's not supposed to work immediately. It's a lifetime of work. It's a lifetime of wrestling with the stubbornness of the body. But finally you get through. And it might just be bit by bit by bit that you'll hardly notice it. But it does happen if you try, if you don't throw in the towel. And instead you keep at it. And you keep on burrowing through with Torah and mitzvot. Eventually the body's resistance gives away, and the true nature of the body comes out. That not only is the body not here to fight the soul, but actually it's here to teach the soul, to enhance the soul, to bring out a much higher truth of God and share that with the soul. So then the body becomes the ultimate contributor, not the distractor. That's the point we're learning over here. So now the Rebbe is going to teach and how that actually unfolds the closer we come to the Messianic time. In other words, the closer we come to Mashiach, the truth of the body becomes more expressed. And the powers that reveal that are more manifest in the world, which means there is a certain mind shift that takes place that in Judaism itself, from the earlier generations to the later generations, which we discussed in the earlier class, that in the earlier generations, it was very common and it was understood that the body needs to be beaten. People used to, any serious spiritual person would beat their body. and in different ways that you would kind of work on subduing the physical. But as the generations come closer to Mashiach, we begin to appreciate. We can start looking at the body and see signs of divine potential. And then, as you get closer and closer, you hear the Baal Shem Tov's call where he says, "Stop beating your body. The body has so much to tell you. Just be gentle with it." And then it continues on through all the generations, 9 generations, till we come to our Rebbe's generation. The Rebbe says, "Hey, come on, the physical is ready already to express God. There is no more enemy." And therefore, the Rebbe says, spread out through the entire world and reveal the godly potential that's in every nook and cranny of the world. It used to be in the olden days, we tried to keep away from certain places. And don't let a Jew go there because the darkness, the klipa, the impurity of the place will overwhelm the person and drag him under. Not so today, the Rebbe says. It's like Moshe tells the spies, go into the land, go across the land to all there it was referring to the land of Israel. But by the time we're done with the world, like the Rebbe says, the whole world will be Israel. So now go across the entire land and uncover its truth. Allow it to speak its truth. So the Rebbe is going to explain how that came about. And it more or less came about by the revelation of Hasidism. Okay, so to understand this, the Rebbe in general starts chapter number 4 by saying we have to realize that Torah has really 2 phases in its. It's going to open the area for a minute, just 1 second. The Torah has 2 phases in its revelation to the world. Until now, we spoke that God gave the Torah in the month of Sivan, in the year 2448 from creation, and that was the empowerment. Now we just have to apply the Torah to the world to elevate creation and bring it into the state of redemption. However, the Rebbe says that Torah itself has 2 major infusions. One was at Sinai, and one is going to be when Mashiach is revealed. The Torah releases itself to the world, or releases its power, its potency to the world, and its enlightenment and its teachings in two shots. One was at Sinai. Now, it's important to note, as the Rebbe explains, at Sinai, at Har Sinai, God gave us everything. It's not like 2 Torahs. That would be a terrible mistake. There is no future Torah that's coming that's new, which means that was not given at Sinai. God gave the entire Torah. He delivered the entire thing in 1 shot. However, our ability to access it and open it up, at that point, we were only accessing a limited external level of the Torah, which was revealed to us at Sinai. Revealed to us. However, the bulk and the deeper, higher, inner light of the Torah, as the Torah is utterly divine, that parts of Torah was not yet released and meant for consumption. It's going to be revealed only when Mashiach comes. And here the Rebbe says something really fascinating. In Parsha Shalach, which was 2 weeks ago, the Torah says, Kalev, who was the leader, he's one of the spies, but he was one of those who did not go astray, tells the Jewish people when the spies are trying to dissuade them from coming into Israel, he says, no, we are going to go up to the land. The term that he uses is, we will go up, Alay Naila, we will surely ascend. We will go up. The fact that he says twice, we will go up, we find that also when God promises Yaakov, when he's going down to Egypt, God tells him, I will bring you up, I will bring you up, I will also bring you up. So from these 2 places, we see that there are going to be 2 ascents. The first ascent was the ascent out of Egypt, and that's one ascent. And the second ascent is going to be the ascent out of this exile, with the current exile, where Jews have been scattered across the entire world. So the Mashiach redemption. But it's not only, of course, if we're again in exile, we need to come out again. That's not the depth over here. The depth over here is 2 levels of elevation. there is one level of elevation, which means one level of divine connection that we were able to achieve after the first exile. And as we understand deeper, it's not that we get redemption because we're in exile. It works the other way around. Because God is ready to reveal to us something very big, we need to go through the darkness because the light is really hidden in the darkness. So we need to extract the light from the darkness. So the darkness itself comes on in order to help us into the light. So we have an exile. So the first exile was for the first elevation. The second exile, which is a much longer exile, and in many ways far more difficult because of its length, this exile as well is a preparatory state for an elevation. The up and coming elevation is going to be far superior than the elevation that we had when we went out of Egypt. That's the meaning. I will lift you up. I will lift you up. Double elevation. What are these two elevations? These are the two levels of Torah that we've received. Level number one, Torah. Torah version 1, and then Torah version 0.2, which is the Torah as the Torah will download to us and open up to us when Mashiach comes on a much, much higher level. In order to be recipients for that, we have to go into the darkness and extract that light from the darkness. And that is the work that we've been doing for this entire exile. Now, just like the power of Torah, the first Torah that we got, as we discussed earlier, is to reveal the Hashem within the lowest of place. That's what we learned. The power of Torah is to reveal God in the physical. And that's what happened by Sinai. God gave us mitzvahs in which we can actually bring holiness and godliness into the material objects of the world. In the same vein, there is a future Torah. And the future Torah, which is going to be revealed then, is going to help us uncover a much deeper godliness in the world. So if the power of Torah is to uncover, not only to reveal Torah, but to uncover what is hidden within creation. So that itself, two phases. Since the Torah that we got earlier was more external, so the divine revelation that it gave us within creation was also of a more external level of divinity that is embedded within the world. But a much deeper aspect of the divine that is within the material physical world is unearthed only when we get a deeper Torah. Now the question is, do we have to wait until Mashiach is here, and Mashiach then will bring us the new Torah, and then after that we'll be able to apply that Torah to the world and extract the gems that are hidden in the world? That's what it would seem to follow. Just like we were only able to activate the godliness in the world after we came out of Egypt and we received the Torah, meaning it was only post-redemption that we were able to extract the holiness that's within the world, because we have the Torah now, and the Torah, we can use it as a tool to uncover its godliness that's in creation. So we might then think the same applies here as well. The exile is only a preparation, and therefore in the exile we don't really have the power to uncover the godliness. Just like in Egypt, they couldn't do a mitzvah yet. It was still pre the giving of the Torah. But the exile, even though it's 2,000 years, almost 2,000, very long, it must show us that the Torah that we're going to have now is just going to be like spectacular, way beyond what we've had earlier. And yet after we receive the Torah, then we will be able to then start applying these spiritual ideas to the physical earth and uncover who knows what's going to come out. So the Rebbe says, true, but not true. Why? Because unlike when we were in Egypt, we didn't get a taste of the Torah before God gave us the Torah. The truth is, maybe we did. The truth is, we can say in Egypt we also did, because the sages tell us, again, the Rebbe doesn't say this explicitly, this is my own little something, but I think we could compare. Because when we went out of Egypt, but in Egypt also we know that even though Torah was only given after the Exodus, 49 days after the exit, 50th day after the Yetzias Mitzrayim, that's when God came down. In that sense, the Egyptian exile was only a preparation, and before that we didn't have any Torah. But it's not exactly the case, because we know that from Abraham, Amram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we already started studying Torah. Albeit there was only a little taste of it. the Torah that it's considered a smell, like a fragrance of the Torah, they started smelling. But at least we had a whiff of it. We had something of it already. So we got a little taste of it. And we know that the tribe of Levi, the entire time in Egypt didn't work. They weren't in the labor camps. They studied Torah. So there was always a presence of Torah in which served as a preparation. So similar to that is before the revelation of the Messianic Torah that's going to be revealed after the full revelation of Mashiach in the third temple. Before that, we have a few generations where we start getting a taste, a trickle of the future Torah. The Torah Chadasha, the new Torah starts to come to us. And when did that start? On the Rebbe says with the Baal Shem Tov, which is in the year 1733, 1740, around that period of time is when this new revelation, the last close to 300 years before the redemption, we're holding already in 2023, so we're talking about 290 years. It's around this particular time which serves as a precursor to the redemption. Nashing, tasting from the future light. Why particularly Baal Shem Tov? Why at this particular time? So the Rebbe says because it's Friday. You see, the revelations of the future are associated with Shabbos, the Shabbos of time. And what do we mean Shabbos of time? Just like there is the weekly Shabbos, there is also the historical Shabbos. When you look at the cosmic Shabbos. So in that vein, we look at the entire history of the world, which at this point, 5,000 and so years, has 6 days. And which means 1,000 years is a day. Like it says in a verse, that in God's eyes, 1,000 years is one day. So then 1,000 years, each millennia is another day. Comes out now, once we hit the year 5,000, we finished 5 days and we go into the 6th day. We're in Friday. The year 6,000 is going to be the entry into Shabbos. Mashiach's times, the godly revelations of Mashiach are associated with that Shabbos. However, we know that we don't have to wait till Shabbos. No way, because Shabbos can come in early. And we know that Fridays, especially Friday afternoons, we already stop doing ordinary work and we start preparing already for Shabbos. We enter into the Shabbos mode. Now, there is a mitzvah that tells us that on Friday, we're supposed to taste from Shabbos food. As foods are cooking on Shabbos, thank God, there could have been a mitzvah the opposite. I like this mitzvah. There could have been the mitzvah the opposite. It's not Shabbos. It's forbidden to touch the Shabbos food, so you should desperately wait for Shabbos. And when Shabbos will come in, you'll be able to delight with all the delicacies of Shabbos. So I tip my hats to the sages for not instituting that, because that would have been, especially in a house like mine where there is so much, thank God, gourmet cooking for Shabbos, and we have a lot of guests and all that kind of thing. And it's like, so it would have been quite a restraint. So it's nice, but it's nice for a much deeper reason, because the physical reflects the spiritual. Not only is it allowed for a person to take and taste of the upcoming Shabbos food, it's a mitzvah. It's as a person is supposed to do it. There's a verse that supports it. It says, Tayamel, those who taste it, Chaim Zachu, merit life. Those who taste it. So it's hard to understand. Okay, Shabbos food is holy. You're tasting life, all kind of life, but on a deeper level, on a much deeper level. The reason why physically we're supposed to taste our Shabbos food is because God wants us to taste Mashiach even before Mashiach is here. That means that we're supposed to taste from the delicious foods. Now, what are going to be the delicious foods served up, the gourmet meals of Mashiach? They're going to be the platters and platters of divine wisdom of the future Torah that is going to be revealed, because in many places Torah is compared to food. So the amazing foods that are going to be given to us, the big ox, the wild ox, the meats, the fish, the Leviathan fish, the ginormous fish, and the fine wines that have been hidden from the days of creation, as it says, which are all part of the future feast, might be physical, but it definitely primarily means a spiritual revelation of incredible divine knowledge that will flood the world. That will be that feast. So we get to taste it at the beginning already on Friday. When on Friday? You don't have to wait for Friday midday. You can start tasting it Friday morning. So Friday morning is already the time, it's already tasting time. So when is Friday morning on the cosmic calendar? If Shabbos is in the year 6000, so Friday morning would be, and a day is 1,000 years, and a day is divided between night and day. So 500 years for night, and 500, and in the Hebrew day, we start with night, because that's the way it was in creation. Vayerev, Vayiboker, first night and then day. So the first 500 years of creation is night, and the second 500 years is day. So from the morning, so also what was that? So you have to go for the year 5,500. The year 5,500 is when daybreak happens. So what is that on the modern day calendar? That turns out to be the year 1740. 1240 is the beginning of the 6th millennium, the nighttime. And then 500 years later is 1740. So what happened 1740? That was actually 6 years after the Baal Shem Tov began to reveal himself. So the Baal Shem Tov and his students were gathering to him, and he started teaching the Hasidic teachings. And so as the Rebbe is explaining over here, we started tasting the lights and the Torah of the future. Oh, once we're tasting already the Torah of the future, we're already been given the ability to unearth the godliness that the Torah of the future will reveal. And that's why we started changing our attitudes towards earth. Instead of looking at earth as a distraction, as the physical, as the material, as a block, some things, the vibrations, the true of the physical world, the true godly essence that's buried in the physical, that is concealed within the physical, we started sensing those vibrations. And the Baal Shem Tov said, it's time to stop beating the physical, your own body. You should start treating your body with much more respect, because you should know that in that body lies the deeper secret of divine light. True, the body on its own, left to its own devices, will never ever acknowledge and will never reveal its secret. Quite on the contrary, it will keep godliness completely imprisoned in it, and it can turn into the total a monster. It can become completely antithetical to anything godly and holy. That's true. That's why you need to train it. You need to harness it, but proceed with caution. Know that this is where all that light really is. So the Rebbe says it begins with the Baal Shem Tov, but it wasn't only the Baal Shem Tov. It says it started with the Baal Shem Tov and his successor, the Maggid, the Mizritcha Maggid. Then it accelerated through the third generation, which was the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Hasidus Chabad, because as we know, anybody that the Alter Rebbe, Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, started systemizing the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov and bringing it down into a philosophy that could be studied and learned. The Baal Shem Tov's light was just pure light, pure godly light. As everybody knows, the Baal Shem Tov was a miracle worker, and he just was illuminating. His teachings were just pure divine gems, but very potent, powerful, pure divinity. And it was sensed, it was received by the soul, but it wasn't received by the mind, by the human side of us. In our faith, we were able to the Baal Shem Tov fired up the faith of the people, touched them in their deepest point, but no one can articulate it, no one can understand it. It didn't enter into the human faculties of people. You couldn't process it. The Alter Rebbe began to introduce Hasidus Chabad, which means taking Hasidus, which is pure divinity, futuristic revelations of God, and translating it to the mind, that the mind can process it and understand it. Within Chabad itself, 7 generations of Chabad teachers and masters were able to create an entire philosophy and reveal these incredible teachings to the mind. And the Rebbe says a major turning point in this advance. So again, the Rebbe is telling us that the Chabad, the Baal Shem Tov and the Chabad Rabbeim are not just influencers in the Jewish world, they are primary milestones in creation and the purpose of creation unfolding. It's part of the giving of the Torah, of God's plan in the giving of the Torah. Now, in the history of Chabad itself, a crucial point was when the Alter Rebbe was arrested. He was arrested because, on the simple level, because those who did not appreciate Hasidism and were looking at it in suspicion, which is understandable because it gave a whole bunch of new ideas, and those who are very concerned for the upkeep of Judaism get frightened if anybody comes in and tries to make changes, which is a noble type of affair, and it's a correct type of affair, of a worry. However, what that does is it challenges you to take a deeper look and to be able to see if it's kosher or not kosher. Obviously, the Baal Shem Tov was kosher. So, and that's why thousands and thousands of people that were the beginning of opponents to Hasidism, if they allowed themselves to inspect it, to study it, to learn it, to examine the leaders and see if they're leading the Jewish people astray from Judaism, from observance, or actually that's having the opposite effect. Anybody that was willing to examine it with an open eye and was not biased and angry and just emotionally upset and just shut their ears and eyes came on board. And that's why you had thousands. It swept across Europe because people realized that this is the real deal. This is not someone who's an imposter, God forbid, trying to. But in any case, in the days of the Alter Rebbe, because the Alter Rebbe was so popular, and he was primarily affecting the scholarly class amongst the non-Hasidic group, because he was so amazingly brilliant, and he was revealing Hasidus in a way that the people who are great brains and minds were able to appreciate it. So they made a libel against him to the Russian authorities, and he was arrested. That was the physical story. But spiritually, it was because in heaven as well, there were accusations that he's revealing too much. He's taking the deepest secrets and he's just revealing it too much. And we discussed it at other times. He was arrested. But then, in the end, he was liberated after 53 days. And he was liberated. And it turns into a great holiday in Chabad, on the 19th day of Kislev. And the inner story is that in heaven above, they gave him the permission and the go-ahead, the green light. The light filled in, it was a red light, and then it turned green. And he said, go ahead and teach. Not only should you teach, you should even increase your teaching. And he started flooding the world with these incredible knowledge, divine knowledge, which is the basis of everything I teach, and so many other amazing teachers in the world today, enthused and infused with these incredible teachings. And this continued for 7 generations, the Rebbe says. And this is the final revelations that prepare the world for the Messianic age. And it's a foretaste of the teachings of Mashiach. Now, but we have to realize it's just a drop of the bucket of what's going to be revealed once Mashiach is revealed. Now, with these teachings, with this enormous infusion of higher teachings in the last close to 300 years, as we spoke earlier, a whole new power was revealed, a whole new empowerment was given to us to uncover the godliness that's within the world. Why? Because what did we say earlier? What is the power of Torah? The power of Torah is to uncover the godly in the creation. And we said the main power of the Torah reveals itself in the lowest parts of creation, which is physical earth. That's why the Torah was given not in heaven, it was given on earth. Because that's where the real power lies, and that has to be on earth. And that's the power of the Torah, of the 28th of Sivan. So in similar to that, when we receive more Torah, and it doesn't just mean more Torah, it means a whole new level of Torah. In Torah itself, we take a quantum leap into a level that is like beyond, because we start opening the window to the future Torah, which is incomparable to the Torah that we've had in the past. It's way above. So the empowerment to elevate the world becomes so much stronger. And that's why, and what is it? So the Rebbe says like this. Here it says, what's the empowerment that we get? It says like this. The empowerment we got through the Torah that we got at Sinai, version 1 of Torah, you can say, first release of Torah. Since it's the external part of the Torah, so it allows us to unearth the external godliness that's within the world. It also reveals within the Jew the external part of the Jew's soul. So it's the external Torah. It's the external part of the soul that unearths the external godliness that's within the world. But it's all on a level of external. When we say external, it's very deep and very high. But we mean compared to what? To Torah version 2. Torah upgrade 2. When the future Torah of Mashiach will come, since it's the inner soul of Torah, the inside of Torah. So what is it going to do to the Jewish people? It uncovers this inner soul of Israel, which in turn, the Torah, the inner soul of Israel and the inner soul of the Torah together uncover the inner soul of creation. And that is the power of the divine essence that is buried within the material, physical things in this world. To bring out the potency of earth on a whole new level. So when did this come? This is, again, it's related to future. But since we have a little sneak peek at the future in the last 300 years, we're already receiving some of that futuristic light. We have already now that power. But here's the interesting thing. Because this is not light coming from the past, it's coming from the future, we understand the further we go towards the future, the more this is going to reveal itself, just like we're seeing in the world of science and technology. The further we're moving into latter time, where we're watching incredible things come out that has been hidden for humanity for all this times. Powers that there are of healing, powers of that we can extract from the world, the ability to feed the entire world with endless and all this is there in the future. All this can be taken out, and the healing powers, as we discussed. Okay. Now the Rebbe says in chapter number 5, this idea that the revelation of Hasidus gives the power to reveal. And I want to say one thing that I missed before, and I want to add that in. We said earlier that it was in general attributed to the Baal Shem Tov, who he's the one who unlocks, he's like has the key and unlocks it, but it's the Alter Rebbe who is given the task to be the funnel through where all this light is going to come to the world in a way of understanding. But and in the Alter Rebbe's life, we said it happened when he was arrested and he was freed. When was he freed? When was the Alter Rebbe liberated from prison? It was on the 19th day of the month of Kislev. So the Rebbe points out something really very powerful. He says, take a look. Kislev is also the 3rd month. Well, we were talking over here that the power of the Torah is associated with number 3. Torah is powerful. 3 is power. Torah is, but we know that the Hebrew calendar has 2 beginnings. One is Pesach time, Passover. That's the time of Nisan. That's when we start counting months. And in that case, Sivan is the 3rd month, and Kislev then is the ninth month of the year. But if we count the year from Rosh Hashanah, which is like September, October, that time, because that's when the new year, and then we have Tishrei, Cheshvan, Kislev. Kislev is the 3rd month as well. It's the 3rd month of the winter months. And we know that there is such a count. There's 2 ways. In some ways, this is the beginning, and some ways that's the beginning. So it's also on the 3rd month. Why? Because Torah is associated with number 3. So the Alter Rebbe's redemption is phase 2 of Matan Torah. See, what's so amazing over here is that the Rebbe is revealing the truths of Hasidism in ways that generally were never spoken. The Rebbe speaks with such certainty, even though people that have, for whatever reason, not examined this part of Torah and not been privy to its beauty, to its depth, to its light, still look at it with hesitation. And this would sound like extremely radical speech, but this is the truth. That's who else is going to reveal it if not for the masters? So the Rebbe is basically saying that this is Torah. There's the Torah of the past, the Torah of the future, and the release of the future Torah begins in the month of Kislev, because it's the third month. It's the winter, not the summer, but it's still number 3. And in other places, the Rebbe explains the quality of the third month of winter over the third month of summer. And that's why it's chosen not to reveal the external part of the Torah, but the internal part, because it's even higher. Okay. This whole idea that through the new Torah of the future, we have a much greater ability to uncover the deeper godliness that's within the world, which is going to be the revelation of Mashiach, when God is revealed in the lowest of the low. And the revelation of God, as we're going to see, the main part of the discourse, is going to be coming from the lowest. That's the whole point. Not only that it reaches even the lowest, but the point is that the lowest point becomes the source of enlightenment and revelation and godly consciousness to all the levels that are above it. That's what's so wild over here. So unbelievable, delicious. In any case, the Rebbe says it's all hinted to in the phrase that has always been used to speak about the notion of the mitzvah that we have and that everybody who's on this class can participate in, and that is spreading the well springs outward. There is a phrase coming from Proverbs, a Mishlei, chapter 16, verse 5, Tezayin Hey. So it says over there, Yafutsu ma'inosecha chutza. Your wellspring should spread outward. So, what is this referring to? So we know that the Baal Shem Tov, once he writes in a letter that once on Rosh Hashanah, he had his soul ascended from his body. The Baal Shem Tov used to go on journeys. Even while he was physically alive, his soul would depart his body and he would ascend into the heavenly realms. And this was something common. The students all know, they can see it happening. Obviously, you can see the Baal Shem Tov's face and everything change. You can see that he's not here. He's physically not in this world because he ascended into the higher realms. When the Baal Shem Tov would go, so one time he writes that he went up there and he was traveling and he saw there was unbelievable joy. He describes that this happened in one year Rosh Hashanah. And he was higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. And then he finally, on the way back down, interesting, that showed that he went even higher. On the way back down, he ends up going into Mashiach's chamber. And he asks Mashiach, when is the master going to come? Mashiach, we understand, his soul is the most brightest soul. And all the tzaddikim have their own chambers where they teach Torah in the supernal worlds in heaven. Mashiach has his yeshiva. I don't know who gets in there to learn with Mashiach Torah, but our souls who are merit to learn with Mashiach. So the Baal Shem Tov comes into Mashiach and he says, Holy Master, when are you coming? And Mashiach answers the Baal Shem Tov, when your well springs will spread outward. And he used this term. Mashiach takes the term from Proverbs, and he quotes that verse to the Baal Shem Tov, Yafutzu ma'inosecha chutza, when your teachings of the Baal Shem Tov will spread around the world. This statement became the motto and the drive of Hasidim to proliferate and share these teachings of Hasidism as far as we can. Now it's interesting, you don't find this energy by other Hasidim. People come to a Rebbe, this and that, and they're inspired, but you don't see in other Hasidim that people are working hard to spread Hasidic teachings around the world. And those that are doing it are inspired by Chabad influence. It was that, even though it was said to the Baal Shem Tov, and the Baal Shem Tov is the father of all Hasidic schools, but it's the Chabad particular lineage that took this concept of Yafutzu Menesecha Chutza, and kind of, this was their drive, that the well springs need to get out. And on some level, it was already explained that when you take the spiritual lights of the Baal Shem Tov and you make it accessible to the human mind, not only to the soul, but you make it accessible to the human mind, that's already taking it outside. Because the human mind is human, it's finite. And these teachings are infinite. It's divine, it's godliness. So to bring something so sacred and so holy, and to bring it into the space of the mind, that the mind should try to, understand it logically, with reason, that is like, in a sense, so a lot of people were very against this whole notion. Great saintly people who understood, they felt that you are to the sacredness of it, you're setting it in a wrong setting. You're going to ruin it. You're going to contaminate it. The mind is not a vessel for it. But the Alter Rebbe was saying, no. It has to go to the outside. That's the point. The point of Torah is not that there should be powerful illuminations and we should swim in the light. The point of it is that we should bring it down into the world. And that's what Mashiach is saying. Mashiach is saying, I can only come to the world. What's my job? My job is, I'm here to introduce the godly world. I'm here to open up the lights and reveal godliness in the entire world. But how will that happen? So first take the divine teachings of Hasidism, which are the lights of the future, and you spread them as far as you can. Infuse them everywhere, starting with the mind. But in the mind as well, you can say, okay, the minds of who? The minds of holy Jews who all day long are sitting and studying Torah. They're not involved in materialism and any physical things. They never sin. They're very holy. The fact that their minds will understand in their intellect, in such a holy place of their minds, okay, that's also called outward. But that at least, okay, we can understand. So came the Chabad Rebbeim and said, no. You have to bring it even to people that you look at and you say, not everything in their head. Sometimes entertain negative thoughts. Sometimes they entertain immoral thoughts. Their mind is sometimes contaminated with a lot of impurity. And maybe not only their mind, their physical bodies sometimes engage in sinful things. And they're definitely not refined and not elevated. Hasidism said, no, don't stop. You have to bring it chutza. You have to bring it out. Share these deep teachings even with people that are not as holy and not as pure. Because the lights of Torah have to go further into the world, more into the world. Discussed earlier, the more it's resistant, the more ungodly it is, the more we want the light to get there. And then the Rebbe basically, and this is where the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the seventh Rebbe, now if we hear all of this, we realize you get a whole different appreciation of where the Rebbe is coming from. And the Rebbe is saying, get it everywhere. Everywhere. Don't refrain, don't hold back. You meet someone, you know a little bit about this person's life, you know that they've been into the worst things, the most depraved things. Physically, externally, you take one look at them, you can't imagine how you're going to introduce Torah ideas to someone who seems to be so externally defiled. And the Rebbe taught us two things, that all the defilements of the world are only external. That person has a soul, a godly soul, that has been buried beneath, and that divine soul doesn't have to suffer just because there's an external, the packaging is not right. But more than that, the Rebbe is saying, the whole purpose is that divine truth should reach everywhere. And therefore, you have to go chutza, outside. And that's what the Rebbe did, is he sent his boys and girls out, his young couples out across to the farthest corners of the world to meet Jews who didn't even know they're Jewish, to meet people that are so far. And the Rebbe said, don't just do a mitzvah with them, put on tefillin. Teach them the Baal Shem Tov. Teach them the deepest teachings. And a person says, come on, what are you talking about? First, you got to take the person to the mikveh. First, let him learn basics. Let him start first observing kosher. Let them first start observing family purity in their home. Let him first marry a Jewish girl. He's married to a non, he's intermarried. In this situation, can you teach? And the Rebbe said, don't make any differentiations. Don't give any pre-qualifications. Teach and teach and teach and flood the world. Flood the world. No one over here ever says who can be on this YouTube, who can listen and who cannot listen, even though we're teaching sometimes the most sensitive teachings. Everybody, it's to everyone on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram. Get it out. Get it out on Twitter. Get it out as fast and as far as you can. And once it's out here, it's not only to Jews, it's to non-Jews as well. The teachings of truth, of divine truth, have to reach the four corners of the earth. And only then, Mashiach says to the Baal Shem Tov, will I be able to come and complete it all. And then flood the world with knowledge that is above and beyond and above and beyond. So the Rebbe says that this idea that we spoke earlier, that from the lowest will come the greatest lights, is hinted to in the words, Yafutzu Meinesecha, let it spread your well springs, chutza. The Rebbe says every single word over here that is used by Mashiach is precise. Number one, Yafutzu means the biggest Yafutzu possible. You're talking about spreading. It has to spread without any limitations. Yafutzu, it has to go everywhere. What has to be spread? Meinesecha. Meinesecha means the springs. The spring means the deepest, innermost light. A spring is where water comes from the core underneath. So it has to be the purest. Don't water it down. Don't think that because you're bringing these teachings to people that are not as holy, not as worthy, that you have to trickle it down. Yeah, try to explain things, that's for sure, or else you're talking to go over people's heads. But don't shy away from telling the full truth. Teach the mayonos, the depth of the teachings. And where? Chutza. Chutza means outside. So the Rebbe says, what is chutza? What is the meaning of chutza? What is the meaning? Chutza means everywhere. There shouldn't be a place where it doesn't come. Everywhere. But here he adds, in this talk, the Rebbe adds another idea. And he says that chutza over here means, he asks the question, it means the truth of chutza, the truth of the outside. What does it mean, the truth of the outside? Outside doesn't have truth. What does outside mean? Outside of holiness, which means outside of God, because where God is holy. So outside of God is true. Is there any truth to anything outside of God? So how can you say in a verse, which the verse is true, Yafutzu Meinesecha chutza, outside, and it having a truth to the outside? What's the truth to the outside? If God is true, holiness is true, outside of God is not true. So what's the truth of the outside? So the Rebbe says, no. The truth of the outside is, the truth of the outside is that God is creating an outside so that his ultimate, which means an outside that is not God, and that is not only not God, but antithetical to God, totally opposing him. And what's the truth of that? The truth of that is because only from that which is dark and the most antithetical from him will his ultimate truth be revealed. And what will be the truth? The truth will be that there is no outside. So the reason there is an outside, the outside exists so that it can be revealed in the outside, that its whole idea is, its whole resistance, its whole negativity is only so that it too can be flooded with God's truth, and it too will say, hey, there's nothing but God. And that's when we will know for sure that there's nothing but God. And that's a truth. So ultimately, everything that is on the other side will flip over. Everything that is on the dark side will flip over. Do we even hear what the Rebbe is saying? We look at a world and we decide this is dark, this is ugly, this is yuk, this is whatever. The Rebbe says ultimately, it's only there to be outside and dark and evil and whatever it is, so that it will contribute to the divine truth being revealed. And the darker it is, the deeper the truth that will be revealed in it and through it. Therefore, the Rebbe says this is, and for now we'll understand why the main kick in Yafutzu Menesecha Chutza, which means the main advance in spreading the well springs outside, which means this idea that from the outside itself should come truth, came from the Alter Rebbe's arrest, meaning from people who opposed the revelation, people that were acting wickedly, and from the Russian Tsarist government that was not a holy people, and they were anti-Semites, and yet in them and through them and from the whole arrest of the Alter Rebbe came a much greater infusion to godliness. And the song, or the motto, I want to say the symbol of the day of the 19th of Kislev, which the Rebbe says is this theme: the power of Torah, and especially of the inner light of Torah, to convert what is the darkest to light, is hinted to in the song that we sing, which captures the essence of the 19th of Kislev, of Hasidism, and that is the verse, Pada b'shalom nafshi. It's a verse in Psalms 55, verse 19. It's interesting that it's verse 19 because it happened on the 19th of Kislev. And it's, what does it say? King David is thanking God for redeeming his soul. Pada b'shalom nafshi. He says, God, you redeemed my soul in peace. Now, what's the connection to the 19th of Kislev? The Alter Rebbe, Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the one that was arrested and released on this day, and he then started teaching these teachings with a much greater force, relates in a letter that he writes regarding his own release, that when he was in prison, he was saying Tehillim, he was saying Psalms, he was praying. And when he got in chapter 55, Psalm 55, to this verse, that's when they came in and they turned the warden, swung open the door and told him that he's free to go. When he was reading this verse, so the Alter Rebbe then says that this was a redemption of peace. And this became the whole motto of the 13th of Kislev, Pada b'shalom nafshi, Hashem has redeemed my soul. Now, its application, besides to the Alter Rebbe himself, its application to Hasidim in the world, to all people who study Hasidus, who study these teachings. What's its application? Its application on a deeper level, but still not the deepest, is that what? That through the studies of Hasidism, we're able to redeem our soul. Our soul, we have a divine potential. But sometimes if we don't have the right teachers and we don't have the right teachings, we don't know how to access our soul. We don't know the truth of our own soul. We look at ourselves superficially. Hasidism teaches us how to pray. Hasidism teaches us the deeper meaning of life. It's the inner light of Torah, enabling us, every single one of us, to uncover our deepest potential, our deepest godly soul, the face of God that is in each and every one of us, to reveal it and to shine that light. Okay. But the Rebbe adds that more than that. Why the redemption of the Alter Rebbe is associated with Pada b'shalom nafshi? Because the emphasis over here is that the light will come from the darkness, not from the light. That Hasidism, being the inner part of the Torah, has the power of the Torah to uncover the light that's in the darkness itself. That darkness itself will shine. Why? Because if you look into Psalms, the continuation of that verse, God, Pada b'shalom nafshi, He has redeemed in peace my soul, is ki berabim hayu imadi, because in the multitudes He was with me. Berabim, in the multitudes, the Rebbe explains like this: the multitudes is referring to the public domain. What's the public domain? The public domain means the place where we do not feel God's dominance, God's authority, God's sovereignty, God's rulership. Because where God's rulership is felt, it's not a public domain. It's a singular domain. There is a singular being who rules. We know in the laws of Shabbat, of Shabbos, there is an area called public domain, an area called private domain. So an enclosed area, generally it has to be a certain measure, is called a private domain. An open area, and where lots of people pass, it's called the public domain. What does it mean spiritually? Public domain means a place where the creatures or beings or create entities that live in intrinsic truth that's binding them together. Everybody's doing their own thing. Why are they doing their own thing? Because everybody's on their own, because they're not tuned into one singular truth. A private domain can be a lot of people, but everybody is unified with one thought. Not one thought, but with one ideal. And that is to serve their part in one bigger picture. But when you don't, and that's God's purpose in creation, every single creature and every single being. So in a place, so for example, in a religious environment, let's say where where people are tuning in to live their lives. I'm not talking religion the way religion is in the world. I'm talking about the way it's really meant to be, where people are living tuned into a certain truth, and they all want to contribute to that truth. So that's called the private domain. A public domain is where, that's what the Rebbe says, it's called the outside. Places that people are not conscious of God. And therefore everybody is serving their own egos and their own personal interests. That's called the public. And what the verse is saying, you redeemed my soul in peace, because even the public is routing for me, is assisting me, is with me. What does that mean? What does that mean? The fight that we have, the ongoing conflict that's going on throughout all of creation is between the domain of holiness and the public, the outside world, the many, the ignorant, that are ignorant of truth. But the ultimate depth of messianic light is not that God is going to bring an Armageddon and destroy evil and eliminate all the darkness through some kind of war where everybody will be killed out. Whoever some kind of spiritual jihad over here, which everybody fighting God is going to be wiped away. Which some people get the impression when you learn the Bible, you learn the prophets, you get the impression that's what it is. Hasidism comes to clarify. The ultimate triumph is not by killing your enemies. The ultimate triumph is by being so true that your enemies have to admit that you're true. And they willfully and even joyfully join your ranks. That's the point. So where God's oneness and truth becomes so obvious that the public domain is included in the private domain. And suddenly the entire world becomes one private domain. That's what King David is talking about. And in his own life, King David had a story like that, because remember, he was attacked by his son. His son rebelled against him, Avshalom. And Avshalom had a huge army, and he was chasing his father. And the Midrash says that King David, when he says, the multitudes who were with me, were meaning even the people that were on my son's side, it was rebelling against me, secretly in their heart, they were praying for my success. That means that they were really on my side. So that's what the Midrash tells us. But so as we apply that, is that everything in the world that is opposite holiness flips over to be on the side of holiness. And the power to do that is the power of Hasidism. That's the teachings of Reb Shneur Zalman of Liadi, that he was arrested for, and he was released on that day. And it actually happened in his case. What happened in his case? It wasn't that angels came from above and burnt down the Kremlin. It wasn't the Kremlin. It was the Russian Senate that were holding trial. They were arrested him. Right? It wasn't that happened. It was they themselves, they had a trial. They themselves looked into it and found that he's innocent. And they themselves, those who opposed him, and they were full of anti-Semites, had to admit to the validity in his truth and concede that he's an honest, upright, decent human being with good interests in the world, and he should be supported, not stopped. So even in the story, you see, it came from the very, very opposition itself became an ally. And that's the point over here. So, and that's the reason why it's peaceful. What does the verse says? You're redeemed in peace. If my redemption comes from there is a fight, and in the end, it's a knockout. I deliver such a punch, and the opponent doesn't get up. Okay, that's not called in peace. Peace is when the adversary himself joins. And this will also mean in the terms of, I spoke about the Russian government. How about the Jewish people that slandered and made up a libel? Their very grandchildren are Hasidim. And many of them themselves later turned around and joined the Hasidic truths. And ultimately, Hasidism, being the truth, is going to reach every single person. Hasidism is not meant if you belong to a sect. If you're a Lubavitch Hasid, or you're this kind of Hasid, or that kind of Hasid. Hasidism is truth, and they know it, and therefore they're Hasids. And those that are Hasids way to be Hasids in the making. Eventually, everybody will be Hasidic, because Hasidism is truth. That's all. It's the ultimate truth of reality. Until we're going to come to the ultimate redeemed, and since this is Pada B'Sholem Nafshi, since this is the Alter Rebbe's redemption was already a messianic form of a redemption. It's when the unholy itself, godliness becomes so obvious that it reaches even the unholy. And more than that, when the unholy flips, it contributes deeper truths to the holy side. It enhances the holy side with even a deeper truth. So what's going to be the ultimate expression of that? That's going to happen in the time of the future redemption. Or I want to say future, the current redemption. Everything will flip. Everything will turn over to holiness. And it will be peaceful. The shalom nafshi, with peace. Like the verse says, God says, and then I'm going to convert the nations. And nations, all of them, 8 billion people on the planet. Safa berura, to a clear tongue. La'avda ishchem echad, to serve him with one shoulder. Everything will join, everything will acknowledge, everything will recognize, and everybody will contribute its own note, its own flavor into the unity, its own insight into the unity. Now, in chapter 7, which we're not going to do now, I was sure I would get to chapter 9. This is so fundamental, so I'm spending a little more time on this talk. The Rebbe is going to continue that in the 7 generations itself, he's going to explain how it applies to him, the 7th one, and how the main breakout of this truth happens in the 7th generation, and particularly on the 28th of Sivan, when the Rebbe comes to America. And therefore, why that is messianic. That is Mashiach. But let's leave that for the next class. Ezra Hashem will complete today. Okay.